move on to the next session on Equine Assisted Services, and I'm delighted to welcome Ed Bracher to the lectern as he's going to introduce it from up here. So, ladies and gentlemen, Ed Bracher.
Your Royal Highness, ladies and gentlemen, it's lovely to be here again. I know many of you from my time at RDA, and it's wonderful to be back in an equestrian world, having, as I like to say, downsized into working with dogs and working with animal-assisted services in dogs. I'm really pleased and grateful that the National Equine Forum has decided to focus on this for a session this afternoon. It's an incredibly important and growing part of the equestrian landscape. And I want to give a little bit of context about what we're doing. And I guess my qualification for doing this is I helped set up and I chair the Equine Assisted Services Partnership, and I'll come back and say a little bit more about that in a second. But probably worth starting off with a bit of a definition and just thinking about what actually we mean when we talk about equine assisted services. And animal-assisted services, if I broaden it out, is a term that's been discussed and debated for a long time by lots of organisations and is generally now accepted as the umbrella term to define a service where you're working with an animal towards a defined outcome that has some therapeutic benefit towards the individual. Normally health and well-being, often with an educational element, and it can be both physical health or mental health. Normally there's going to be a facilitator working with a client and an animal to promote the improvements in physical health or in social or emotional functioning of the person. And these interventions are designed to meet defined goals for the individual's needs. And those goals can cover a whole lot of different things, as is listed on the screen at the moment. So just worth mentioning that this is not new in any way at all. Many of you might know that Hippocrates, founder of modern medicine, he actually wrote a paper 2,500 years ago, probably wasn't called a paper then, but on the value of spending time with horses. More recently, the York Retreat, a home for people with mental health needs in York, they introduced working with animals in 1796 for moral and social treatment, as they say. Interestingly, I found out that Florence Nightingale actually got her patients to look after rabbits and chickens as part of what she called their emotional therapy. My world now, dogs and dog therapy became much more prevalent after the First World War, and horses particularly kicked in after the Second World War. And we've seen the growth of it since that time. Obviously, since the 60s, the RDA, which is close to my heart, has been pushing this, originally mostly with physiotherapists, but now with a range of other health and social care professionals, occupational therapists and others. And I suppose today it's gone well beyond just the RDA, and we know that there's something in the region of around 1,000 practitioners, both big and small, operating in the UK. And it's really important to recognise that it's, I guess one of the misconceptions is that this activity is all non-ridden. It's not. It's ridden and non-ridden. So there's work that can be done on the horse and off the horse. And some of the research that the BEF did last year, I think, showed that just over half of the pieces of research that have been done in the last few years actually referred to what they called therapeutic riding, so actually on the horse. So what's actually happening here? Well, we're going to hear a little bit more from Sharon in a minute about some of the neuroscience behind this, but effectively animals are social connectors. We know that. They're mood lifters, they're honest, empathetic, non-judgmental, and that's an incredibly important thing, and it allows the client to focus on the horse, not the therapist, and especially people who do have mental health issues. It allows them to relax and explore how they feel more positively. And I like to think that curates an environment where the positive change can happen. It's also experiential, and And as people experience and respond differently to animals, and indeed the animals respond differently to them, it means that the facilitator of the session has to respond to that difference. And in a world, particularly for people with a disability or a mental health need where difference is sometimes not dealt with very well, there's something rather fantastic for me about watching people work with animals and have to respond to that difference and deal with that and provide the service in that way. I think the other thing is it's engaging and it's fun. It's interesting, I went to a talk last year. It's been proven that the contact with an animal, and I'm pleased to say that horses and dogs are top of the tree, so that's great for me. But contact with an animal, and even eye contact with an animal, is the third most effective way of creating oxytocin in your body. And you may know that oxytocin reduces stress, and if you want to know the first two, they are taking ecstasy, which is problematic, and at least a 20-second hug with another human, which is increasingly problematic. And I think it's quite interesting also that if I put these photos up, and I had to put one up of one of our dogs, and I was banking on, and thankfully it's worked, the general sense of smiling and positive response to those pictures we have in the audience. And I think we know that just looking at or just having contact with an animal is therapeutic, and you can see from those photos how beneficial that is for those people. So why is this important? Why is it needed? Well, it's well reported that there's a crisis in social care at the moment in the UK, mental health care, dementia, depression, ever decreasing, in my view, ever decreasing opportunities for people with different needs to access contact with animals or the outside and the general benefits that those bring, and basically a lack of opportunity for many people to get the support that they need. The length of waiting list for things like child and adult mental health services is shocking. We're doing some work in Oxford, and currently the waiting list for an 18-year-old with a mental health condition in Oxford is roughly 18 months, which doesn't really provide much help. So I think horses are not the answer, the only answer, but they're very definitely a part of the answer, and this is an effective and important way of engaging and providing support. And additionally, it provides routes into other areas. It can open up different opportunities and things for people to do, and we'll hear in a little bit from one of the participants in BHS's Changing Lives programme about plans and ambitions that have come out of that. Currently in the UK, as I said, there's increasing demand, but there's also increasing provision. We heard earlier on, RDA, an impressive 25,000 people benefiting from 368,000 sessions in 2024, and I'm pleased that the Pony Club knew that, given that they live below the RDA. So, but there's also increasing acceptance and engagement with alternative provision, and that's helpful for this. But, and I put that quote up there because it hurt me at the time, but Secretary of State for Health, when I asked him a few years ago about how we could get this more generally accepted, said, well, of course, the problem is what you do is quite quirky and eccentric. So there's a job for all of us to actually make people realise it's not quirky and eccentric, it's effective, it's sensible, and it really works. So I think trying to demonstrate that is really important, and it plays a little bit to the issues of social licence, which you were just mentioning. And I know Michael, my successor at RDA, has talked a lot about social relevance, and I think that's really important here. And that what this does is it keeps and allows horses to be relevant for a different section of the population, and it creates that relevance for a different group of people, and that's really important. So the Equine Assisted Services Partnership, we recognised probably 10 years ago that part of the problem here is there's this huge broad range of organisations and individuals involved, and it's quite a fractured picture. So we set up EASP 5 years ago. We're a member-led body, and we have a standards-based approach. So we're not a regulator, but we work to, we get people to self-certify that they're working safely, and that they're working effectively, and that they're working within what might be considered good horse welfare. As I said there, we're modality agnostic. It sounds a bit pompous, but basically it means we don't care how you do it, we just want you to do it well and safely and effectively. And the idea is that we can then bring all the organisations together to collaborate, and by collaborating we can have a stronger voice, and we can present what we do more meaningfully. And the next challenge for us will be to get in touch with those commissioners and make sure that people start to understand what we're doing and why it's important. So finally, from me, just a couple of calls to action, if I may. So please take an open-minded view of this. It is not quirky and eccentric, and if you hear anybody say that, slap them, because it's wrong. I think we need to get past that. We need to be clear that this is a sensible and serious activity. So be open-minded and get involved. Think about how you can support this work. Most of it's done by charities and individuals working really hard with limited resources. So whatever your role in the equestrian industry, think about how you can support this and promote what we do. So that's a very, very brief overview of where we are and what's happening. And I'm delighted now to introduce Sharon Gray, who's an educational consultant, who's going to talk a bit about the neuroscience of learning and the biology of stress, and how we take a trauma-informed approach. And I think I'm right in saying a National Equine Forum first is going to play Jenga while she does it. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Oh. Thank you, Your Highness, ladies and gentlemen. It's absolutely a pleasure to be here. Now, when we looked at the quote about it being quirky, we actually know the reason why this work is having such a positive difference is because we've got the neuroscience that underpins this. We now know what's happening in the brains and the bodies of our young people when they're involved in this type of work. So if I pose a sort of a question for ourselves, in terms of we're here today together, and we've probably been through ups and downs of life, stress, adversity, but we've managed on our journey to get here. So I'd like you to think about what is it that's enabled you to get here as the well-rounded professionals, sort of respectable people that you are. And I would imagine that as we're talking about that, some of you would start to think about some of the connections and the relationships, the collaboration that we've had in our lives, because we know that our experiences and our relationships, our connections, are what grow the brains of our children into our adolescents and into our adults. So forgive me, this afternoon we're going to have a little game of Jenga where we are going to grow together very quickly a metaphorical child. And what you'll see, I've got my Jenga blocks here color-coded, because what we know in terms of the neuroscience of learning, child development, a child goes through very significant developmental spurts. As I'm doing this, you might notice that my hand is shaking. It wasn't shaking about 2 hours ago when I was sat in the audience. Isn't it interesting what stress and anxiety physiologically does to the body? I'm going to take a deep breath to soothe and calm myself, look around to get some relational regulation from nice, kind people, take a breath and get back into my brain so that I can continue. Because what we have here is our first Jenga block. And we're going to liken this to the developing brain that's coming online. And you can see, last night, the primary school teacher and me, I was colouring in. Now, from the last trimester to the first 6 months of a baby's birth, the part of the brain, and this is science simplified, guys, absolutely. The part of the brain you can see that's coming online is the brainstem. It manages all of our physiological major body organs without our conscious awareness. So if we think of baby at this age and stage, what do they need in terms of being alongside? They absolutely are born into connection and relationship. It's a biological imperative, absolutely crucial. So we have our parent that has unconditional positive regard for baby. facilitates a sense of safety. It doesn't give them a safeguarding policy to read, but it's through that serve and return interaction and connection that we facilitate that safety. And then we've got baby, who isn't able to talk to us, but can communicate with a highly attuning, emotionally available and present adult, so the adult can start to identify what might the behavior of baby be communicating to us so that we can anticipate and meet their needs. And all this happens at this developmental stage through last trimester to 6 months. At this age and stage, we now know a baby simply cannot physiologically regulate themselves. Now, when I was born, my mum read books and Super Nanny told her, leave Sharon to cry up in the nursery or wherever it was. Okay, she did the best that she could with the knowledge that she had. She woos the day because now she has me to deal with, but the whole thing about all of this is it's not about perfect care, it's about being good enough. And as a single mum, that was what she was able to do. And as a result of that, through that repeated being soothed, calm and comforted, what babies develop is what's called good vagal tone, an ability through those repeated experiences to go on in life to be able to self-soothe and self-calm. So that's a bit about that brainstem coming online. And as we go through with my Jenga model, I'm going to whiz through really, really quickly. My hand is still shaking, so I'm going to be as careful as possible because I don't want my Jenga to come tumbling down. So the next developmental major stage for childhood is between the ages of 6 months and 18 months. And the part of the brain that's coming online here is the limbic system. Now, the limbic system is the seat of our emotions. It's a very simplified model of the triune brain. And at this age and stage, we can see that our children are gaining greater prowess, are exploring the world in a sensory kind of way. And what we have alongside our child at that time is a co-adventuring adult to explore the awe and wonder, and of course, to keep the child safe and maintain those boundaries, because of course, I will be their secure base as an adult for them to toddle away and explore. But if I see they're going to put the finger in the electric socket, I'm going to say, no, 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 we don't do that. And what happens when I say to my toddler at that age, no, 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 we don't do that? They communicate to me that I have stopped them fulfilling their intent. Isn't it interesting? We often call that the terrible twos. At that earliest age, we're starting to potentially demonize children that they are choosing to behave in this way, when actually it's a physiological dysregulation. So here we have that limbic brain. We are developing brains through the experiences we give our children and the relationships. We go into 18 months to 3 years when we're looking at the thinking brain, the cognitive brain coming online. And here, what do we need? We need an adult alongside who is a co-constructor of meaning, can try to help us to make sense of this crazy world that we're living in. By the age of 3, we don't simply wake up one morning able to problem solve and work out issues in the world. We experience all of this as a result of repeated experiences in the relationships with those folk that we feel safe with. Safe because that's pleasant and that calms and soothes our stress regulation system, and safe because I might try something different and challenging, but if I'm with someone that I know has got my back, I'll give it a go. Also, by the age of 3, we know the brain has gone through the most significant developmental growth spurt. The only other time in life is adolescence, when it changes so much, okay? Really important that we know that. The attachment style is developed, okay? The brain is neuroplastic, it's changing all the time. Hopefully we'll all have learned something new today, so our brains will have changed as a result of that. But also by the age of 3, as a result of the experiences in relationships that our children have had, they will form the blueprint of their stress regulation system. Now, the stress regulation system, you think about it, formed by 3. I was a child with 6 other children. And my mum, a single mum, okay, she did the best that she could. And every morning before going to work, she would put toast on the table for us to have our breakfast and then go on to the world, as it were. And she'd take us to wherever we were going. And the way that we got our needs met was a bit of a tussling, a little bit of pushing, a little bit of shoving, and then we'd get our toast on the table. Needs met, and off we would go. The difficulty for me I was in education all my life, apart from the year when I was excluded. When I started in nursery school, I did what I've always done. I repeated the patterns of my experiences. So when the lovely nursery nurse put the milk and the biscuits on the table, what was I doing? And there was absolute chaos behind me of children crying. And then, because perhaps that lovely lady, that lovely person didn't understand this, she would say, "You are a bully, one finger away from this. Go and sit on the thinking step and think about your choices." Well, how could I think about my choices if my model of the world was that's how we appropriately got our needs met? So understanding this is so important. And of course, we grow up into, this is from 3 to 7, where we're thinking about power and responsibility. And then this is key stage 1 in our primary schools. Oops, see? This is what happens, but it's good enough. It's still good enough. And that's all we're endeavoring to do, because I have relational support from someone around me that can help me on my journey. And then into skills and structure. So all well and good. Together, guys, this afternoon, we've created this metaphorical young person who, through the aspects that we've been talking about, has had significant good enough care, and so is likely to be able to manage their shaky hands in a better way than I am right now, because they're possibly able to regulate themselves physiologically, relationally, and cognitively. But without any judgment whatsoever, life happens, yeah? What about if this child perhaps was born and their key carer had postnatal depression? And so as a result of that, the key carer wasn't able to give that constant emotional availability that was needed in a good enough way. No judgment at all. Maybe there's poverty, maybe there's illness, maybe there's bereavement, maybe there's loss. And as a result of this, you can see this early, this is what happens, isn't it? This early element of child development becomes that much more fragile and vulnerable. And that might continue for this child. I know, sort of, it might be a parent's left, it might be neurodiversity in a world that doesn't understand, and so forcing and putting pressure on young people to behave in a way that really doesn't fit with them. And if we carry on and keep on going, we suddenly see that my little young person can become incredibly, incredibly fragile. And if we look at this with empathy and compassion with this young person, maybe we place them in a situation that is slightly out of their window of tolerance, with an element of extra challenge, and what might happen? Because of that insufficiently strong enough stress regulation system, that type of thing happens. And then what happens to this young person, and in my experience, and probably yours, it's quite likely that behaviour causes harm for others and potentially for themselves. And in some school settings, they would be asked to leave. They would be excluded through no real fault of themselves. And of course, we are not defined by what's happened to us, but it does shape our brain. And as soon as we start to understand this, we can work on how we can ensure that even those who are most vulnerable, resilient, have complex needs, can be appropriately supported. This is one that I made earlier. I'm a Blue Peter girl. So here we have a child, again, potentially metaphorically, with gaps or interruptions in that developmental pathway. So let's think about this now from a Changing Lives Through Horses perspective. What is it that they're doing? They're identifying that some of our children might not be able to physiologically calm and soothe themselves because they haven't had those experiences at that earliest stage. And so what they're doing is identifying those earliest needs and understanding that at the right time, this baby needs that highly attentive, emotionally available adult to soothe and calm and be alongside, sense of being special, sense of being safe. We identify that and we plan carefully to meet that need. So what we're starting to do is identify those gaps. No judgment, no labeling in terms of medical worlds, but maybe there are some aspects there that can be helpful. This is a social model of what we can do to really support, and evidences what Changing Life Through Horses do. And as a result of that, being supported to physiologically self-calm, to name and tame some of these big emotions that happen within our bodies as a result of being stressed or feeling anxiety, we are slowly starting to extend our window of tolerance. Yeah? And then when it's sufficiently good enough, we've all got probably gaps and interruptions in our developmental paths, yeah? And actually we need to, because if we haven't experienced aspects of stress and adversity with the protective factors of the relationships, it takes a village to raise a child, then we won't develop that ability to be able to overcome difficult circumstances. So it's not about being perfect, it's about being good enough and having folk who are curious and not furious when perhaps some of our young people don't get it quite right. Like me, in the nursery school, they actually excluded me then. I wasn't allowed back into school for another year. And they didn't understand. Actually, there's more to it than that, but I'll tell you another time. So here we are. Once we've understood that those early physiological aspects are being supported through the pictures we just saw, the pictures that Ed shared of the young person with the horse, you get that sense of visceral safety, of soothing and being calmed, and then able to name and tame that emotion for that young person so that they can start to think about the strategies in that moment with the horse and take those into other areas of their life. And then we're thinking about maybe a young person who's got interruptions at this stage in terms of what we call 6 months to 18 months, that hasn't perhaps had, for whatever reason, an adult alongside to be able to co-adventure. The pandemic, all of those types of things when social interaction was cut down, relational poverty for many of our youngsters. So what we need to do is think about that. How can we be alongside our young people to support in that connectivity, in those relationships, to enable them to desire to want to explore this world and fin it in terms of the awe and wonder that's out there. And this is what's happening. So we're not saying that it has to be perfect, but what we are saying is for some of our children, for whatever reason, without judgment, their experiences have meant that their brains have grown in relation to survival. And great, their brains have adjusted to this situation. Of old, when I first went into special education, we would name maladjusted brains. That's not the case at all. It's adjusted. We've understood that now. And to be able to enable all of us to do things that take us out of our comfort zone, that trigger our stress regulation system, that mean that we need to widen our window of tolerance, so we can do things that we never thought we might be able to do before, we need this kind of understanding. Because it can't just magically happen. It needs those connections, those relationships with people and animals in a well thought out, targeted way to support that developing resilience. And resilience cannot be taught, it's caught by being alongside connections. So for me, to sum up, in terms of changing lives through horses, it is absolutely changing lives. For many of our young people, and I've spoken to many of them, it's absolutely saving their lives because it's enabling them to take control and autonomy of their lives and to manage themselves in a more problem-solving and effective way. Guys, it's a whistle-stop tour. Thank you very much for listening. Amusement with my slides. Thank you. And I hand it over to...
Thanks, Sharon, so much. That's a brilliant description and visualization of that. That's fantastic. We're going to move on now to our next presentation, which is coming from Rosie, Bensley and Jemma Hockley, who are the co-founders of Strength and Learning Through Horses in North London. And they're going to share some of their tips on how an accessible environment for young people with mental health challenges can benefit both them and the lessons that the wider equestrian industry can learn.
Good afternoon, Your Royal Highness, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Sharon, for your presentation. That was brilliant and has set the scene really nicely for what we're going to talk about today. So we are Rosie and Jemma, and we're the founders of Strength and Learning Through Horses. Today we're going to be presenting some learnings from our young people about their experiences of accessibility in the equestrian industry, because we have learned over the years that it's about more than just the horses.
I don't think I've ever felt welcome at our stables at all. I always felt like I was doing something wrong. I was always criticised, either for my home life or that I wasn't as riding as much as everyone else was.
So we are an equine assisted therapy and education centre based in North London. We've been operating for 15 years and currently 500 young people per year rely on our support. All of them have experienced adversity in their lives. And we have plans, we've currently got plans to upgrade our centre and we'll be doubling capacity over the next 5 years. There is such a demand for this type of support. We see the power of equines to transform lives every day, and young people leave our service with a passion for horses. What we want is for more young people that have come through Equine Assisted Services to leave and to access opportunities in the equestrian industry, because we know that when it goes well, it can have a life-changing impact. But we also know that when it doesn't go well, it can have a negative impact on well-being.
Well, I never got a negative reaction from the horse. They were just always really sweet. Whereas with the people, it was more, I feel like I was being judged or I wasn't doing anything right. For me, it didn't feel worth it to go back. Like, it outweighed the horses. Although I loved the horses and I wanted to spend time with them, the people just made it not enjoyable.
For this presentation, we wanted young people to speak for themselves, and you've heard some of them already. So we've interviewed 11 service users. The overriding theme was the role that human relationships play as a gatekeeping factor to engagement with horses.
I like that people actually go out of their way to talk to you instead of like everybody just not speaking to each other, like in a lot of the other places.
We have been researching equine assisted services for 15 years, conducting doctoral level studies into what young people say helps them and why. The two key findings relevant to today are that we need to create a space where young people feel safe and free of judgment. We're going to share some specific ways that we have implemented this at SLTH, or Strength and Learning Through Horses, with the caveat that we ourselves are still learning in this area all the time. We've learned from our young people, other providers, and from some brilliant equestrian industry initiatives.
Don't judge you based on where you come from or who you are or what you've done in the past. They base you on how well you are.
Creating a safe space is about setting up both physical and emotional safety, and we must recognise how the two interact. Physical safety creates the conditions for emotional safety, and the equestrian industry sets excellent standards for managing physical safety. So today we're going to focus on emotional safety, which is helping young people to feel comfortable to be themselves, share their worries, and ask for help without fear of judgment. Our experience is that if this isn't in place, young people will not engage.
Make us feel like welcome and safe here. If the horse is doing anything, you have experience, so you know what to do.
Research has shown that emotional safety is created through young people's experiences of the staff, their observations of staff's interactions with each other and with the horses. At SLTH, our one rule is that we respect differences in horses and humans, and we are understanding of both horse and human difficulties. Our staff receive regular training to work in this way, and we aim to model it in our interactions at all times.
He didn't feel like the people knew him very well. So that was one of the things that made him a little bit uncomfortable, that he didn't... He felt a bit of an outsider with people other than the horse.
We wanted to share a few practical things that we've embedded into our human code of ethics to support accessibility, as that's what we're here to talk about today. We feel, as well as all of these up here, which I'll briefly go through, that the most important one is that we don't present ourselves as experts and we make mistakes. And we really do model this on site. It happens all the time. There's always a loose horse running around, and the young people see us work together as a team to kind of sort it out. We do this to encourage our young people to share their thoughts and ideas with us and just to have a go.
don't like shout at you and they don't scream at you, and the teachers here are like, the staff here is really nice.
The other things that we try and do to create a really welcoming and understanding environment is to be aware of our own biases, experiences, and most importantly, privilege. Be client-led, ask our clients what they need, and also it's okay to feel like you don't have all the answers. Ask your young people. We don't shout, or we try not to unless there's a loose horse. We do not present ourselves as experts, so there's no absolute right. The horse world is changing, we're all learning together. We say no as little as possible, and we try and create time for clients so that if they need additional time and space, particularly around transitioning, often it's particularly from the car to the stables, and we have, Ed, a very helpful dog who can get young people out of the car. Do you want me to press?
So, emotional safety doesn't end with how the humans interact. It's essential that the same relationships are modelled in how we interact with our horses. So when clients see horses being punished for unwanted behaviour, it may trigger their own experience of trauma and reinforce beliefs that they are to blame when their own emotions impact their behaviour, as Sharon was speaking about. And when they hear negative names given to horses, this can reinforce unhelpful narratives that they hold about themselves when they experience similar challenges to that horse. So that's why at SLTH we think psychologically about both horses and humans. And all behaviour is seen as communication without any negative labels. So we have a horse code of ethics in place to make sure this happens in practice, and that's based on understanding where behaviour comes from. So in practice, the way that we do this is we use these 4 W's as a framework to look at horse behaviour. So that is what's going on for the horse, what is going on for me, what is going on between me and the horse, and what is going on in the environment. So by taking this lens, you can help clients look at horse and human behaviour by thinking psychologically. This means being curious, non-judgmental, and solutions-focused, and you don't need to be a therapist to do it.
I could tell the focus was on the horses. If the horses weren't happy, then we would focus on the horses to work out why they're not happy, what are we doing wrong, stuff like that. Like, instantly the care is on the horses here.
So if hearing from our young people gave you some food for thought, here are some practical things that you can do next. So we'll be sharing our codes of ethics and a short accessibility checklist on our social media. I'd also recommend locating your local Equine Assisted Services practitioner, reaching out and collaborating, sharing learning. Signing up to the Equine Assisted Services Partnership mailing list to be kept informed about training resources, and checking out the British Horse Society's Everyone Welcome initiative and Changing Lives Through Horses. The most successful outcomes for young people we have found is when our staff have directly liaised with and created relationships with organisations at other equestrian providers, and when we worked together to create a supported transition from our service into equestrianism. So you can see from this slide what can be achieved when the equestrian industry and Equine Assisted Services work together.
It brings like a sense of like calm here, and it makes me realise that not everything in the world is horrible. It sucks in the world. I don't know. It's just keeping my will to live a bit stronger.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Rosie and Jemma. We're now going to move on to our final presentation in this session, which is from Andrew Brooks, who I'm delighted to say is going to be joined on the stage by possibly the youngest presenter at the National Equine Forum for some time, saving you, Rolly, obviously. And we'll hear a parent's perspective on the transformational power of the Changing Lives Through Horses programme. So, Andrew, over to you.
Your Royal Highness, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. We're going to capitalise on Sharon's presentation by feeling the good vibes up here, because I have a 10-year-old and I'm fairly nervous as well. And if you feel that we're nervous, you want to meet the mother who's sat at home in Lincoln, even more nervous than we are at the moment. It's an honour to be here and be invited to the National Equine Forum. And what I want to do with this presentation is share our remarkable journey so far with horses and the transformative power of equine facilitated learning. So we were asked this question just after lunch, and our journey with Changing Lives Through Horses began with James's passion for horses, not the other way around. And as parents with a child with special educational needs, don't like to label, and a specific learning difference, we've just recently finalised an education, health and care plan, which also has an additional education outside school environment to be able to capitalise on our journey with the Changing Life Through Horses programme as well. So we're very pleased to be able to share this story with you this afternoon. We're sharing this story because of the work that was done through the Growth House stables and through iPegasus Community Interest Company, who run the Changing Lives Through Horses programme up in Misterton, which is North Nottinghamshire, if people need to get their bearings on a map. And the reason for this is because it offers a unique learning environment that caters for James's learning style and helps him build his confidence. And we're incredibly grateful for organisations like the British Horse Society for providing these equine facilitated learning opportunities. And we're excited to see how this journey will grow from now into his next years of life. As a parent, we've always sought ways in which we want to support James's journey and particularly his well-being. And when James expressed his first interest in horses, coming from a non-equestrian background, I initially didn't really grasp the profound nature and impact that this would have. Mostly on my wallet, but mostly around being able to cater for James's well-being. But his passion, and he uses this word in his own voice, for horses is undeniable, and we decided to give it a try. The decision opened up a world of possibilities, and witnessing James's growth has been incredible. And you know, we've seen examples where other people within James's tribe and support mechanism have been able to point out to us sometimes where stressors, the sort of thing that Sharon mentioned in her presentation, come out that we wouldn't be aware of, but we were able to be advised that there were some issues there that we needed to look at and see what we could do about. So today, I stand before you as an advocate for equine facilitated learning. I've seen firsthand how horses can help young people like James overcome challenges, and I've seen the way it builds his confidence and develop essential life skills. So we're here today to share our story and inspire you to support this incredible field.
Your Royal can you hear me? Just making sure. Your Royal Highness, ladies and gentlemen, I am James and I am 10 years old. I love horses. Riding is my favourite thing to do. When I was younger, school was really hard for me. I have dyslexia, which makes things difficult to read and write. When I'm with horses, everything changes. They don't care about if I have trouble reading or reading. They just love me for who I am. Riding makes me feel brave and strong, and I've learned how to take care of horses, groom them and tack them up. It's a lot of responsibility, but I like it. I've also made lots of friends at the stables. Horses have helped me in so many ways. I'm more confident now and don't get as anxious as I used to. I'm really grateful for the Changing Lives Through Horses programme. It has helped me discover my passion for horses and learn so much about myself. Thank you.
As James enters his early adolescence, apparently there's 3 stages of adolescence. I don't see that there's that many stages in purgatory, but actually 3 stages of adolescence is quite enough. And we know the challenges will become more complex, but we feel, and hopefully you feel, that his connection with horses will remain steadfast and a source of strength, particularly as we continue to guide him through his potentially, fingers crossed, often turbulent teenage years. The skills developed through Changing Life Through Horses programme, communication, empathy and problem solving are becoming invaluable tools for navigating the challenges of this stage. He's learning to set goals, work towards them, and overcome setbacks, whilst also building strong relationships with his peers and mentors at the stable. James has always dreamed big, and his passion for horses has given him a clear vision for his future. He wants a career in the equine industry, perhaps as a riding instructor, stable manager, Olympic show jumper. But we're committed to supporting whatever aspirations he has, including exploring apprenticeships and alternative education pathways that may better suit his learning style in the future. We believe that with the right support and guidance, James can achieve his dreams and build a fulfilling life centred around his love for horses. So we've said that James's development has been really supported through the programme, and it's demonstrably improved his well-being. He's more confident, resilient, engaged in life. He developed a strong work ethic, which Andrew exploits at every single point, but a sense of responsibility and deep empathy for others, whilst also nurturing his passion. The programme has helped him to grow as a person and given him a sense of direction and purpose. These positive outcomes are echoed in the experiences of other people across the UK who've engaged with the programme. The BHS did a survey, and 80% of those participants showed that they had improvements in their confidence and life skills. So the collaboration that we have with James, the British Horse Society, the programme, Grove House Stables, iPegasus CIC, and the local authority, let's not miss the important organisation within all of this, and us as parents, exemplifies this type of approach, leading to a positive outcome for James. Looking ahead, we're filled with hope and excitement for James and his future. We're determined that he can follow whatever pathway he chooses, and it's in the equine industry, and we're confident that he will make a valuable contribution. His experiences, as we've said before, have instilled a strong work ethic, compassionate heart, and a deeper understanding of the human-animal bond. We envisage him to be a leader in the field, inspiring others with his passion and dedication. And as we've said before, we're discussing future career paths and opportunities that will allow him to do that. But James's story is not just one of these heartwarming stories. It's a testament to the growing nature of what you've just heard from previous presentations just now about the efficacy of this approach and the opportunity that the equine industry has as a whole to be able to support this into the future. I've shared my family story today to highlight the transformative power that we found with James's journey. But we think that the benefits of supporting equine facilitated learning extends far beyond the individual growth. It ripples out into the wider community. Government reports and industry data consistently demonstrate, as we've seen in the previous presentations, about the significant contribution of the equine sector in the UK economy. By investing in these type of programmes, we can not only empower young people to strengthen the vital industry, but also the other benefits that it brings for the wider equine assisted service sector. So, as I conclude, I want to leave you with this thought, and hopefully a big sigh of relief, because this perhaps will be the last presentation you will see today, that horses have an extraordinary ability to connect with us on a deep level, fostering learning, growth and self-discovery. The Changing Life Through Horses programme has definitely been a beacon for James, guiding him through challenges and illuminating his path forward to a brighter future. His journey highlights not only the individual benefits, but the potential for wider social and economic impact. And it's a testament to the power of horses as how they would transform lives and inspire people. So please, as other presenters have talked about, let's advocate for equine assisted learning and the wider equine assisted services field, so that more people like James have the opportunity to engage with this. I want to express my gratitude to the British Horse Society, Changing Lives Through Horses programme, and for all of those who've dedicated their time and resources to making this programme a reality. Your commitment to empowering young people through horses is an inspiration for us all. So let's continue to champion the cause, ensuring that it reaches every corner of our society. This is a legacy we can create together, and a legacy of empowerment, connection, and hope. Thank you for your patience and attention in listening to us this afternoon.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you very much to Andrew and James. Can I invite the rest of the speakers from the session to come and join us up here for the panel session? I just want to start off, James, by letting you know that there's a lot of love for you on Slido. So, not a question, but please commend James, please, it says. So, thank you for that. So we know the drill. Time for some questions. We've got a bit of time left. Are there any questions from the audience? Yes.
Sorry, I'm really nervous. My name's China, and I've come from Ebony Horse Club in Brixton. And it seems like a good opportunity to ask my question, especially having Helen talk about the Olympics and our triumphs there. Sorry, I've written it down because I'm really nervous. Okay, so us at Ebony, we take similarities from Equine Assisted Learning, and we are proud to create amazing riders, but are prouder to create amazing horsemen with evidence-based and scientific horse welfare at the forefront. Most feedback I get from these young people that I work with is the barrier into the sport side of equine. So we are based, if people know Brixton, Stones Throw South, middle of estates. So with logistical and funding issues of transporting our ponies, is there any initiatives for young people from low social and economic demographics accessing these services to take the jump from centres like Ebony to competitive horse sports?
Great question, and I'm getting some nods from the front of the stage here. James, do you want to pick this one up? Can we have a microphone at the front of here?
I'm sat next to Jim, so we're both nodding individually, and I think I'm sat next to the folks here. Maybe Jim, do you want to answer on?
Thank you, James. First of all, I think we recognise the good work that racing is doing in this sector, and actually there's a good continuity to go through that. It is harder sometimes to go into the disciplines, the opportunity to transition from that, but there are plenty of bits of work that are going on to try and target those from different backgrounds to give them the opportunity. But as I said, there are barriers. You're absolutely right, but there is some work going into trying to address that. But I won't give you a promise.
Great, thank you. I'm going to move just quickly to a question from Slido because we haven't got an awful lot of time and it's an important question. So Louise has asked what work is being done to understand what, if any, welfare implications are for the horses being used in this work. And I think it is a really important point. We at EASP have worked with the National Equine Welfare Council to try and develop a code that's specific to equine assisted services, but as you've heard this afternoon, it's quite a broad range of services involved, and I think the other approach that we're keen to take is to ensure that the people who are working in this field have sufficient knowledge and care for the horse to be able to do it credibly. However, we're not complacent, and I think this is absolutely an area where what we hope is by collaborating across a number of organisations, we can develop a knowledge base and evidence about what is needed and how we can protect the horses. Rosie, I don't know if you've got anything to add to that.
I don't think so, other than I think to do it well, you have to centre, as we touched on our presentation, you have to centre the horse welfare.
Okay, was there a question in the middle? Yes, right in the middle. I'll come to you next. I'll come to you next, Michael. Okay, we'll go Michael first and then come to you, if that's all right.
Thank you. Michael Bishop from the RDA. Clear narrative about the social value of horses from what we've just heard, and yes, I would say social relevance too, but I wonder how we make sure that we collectively tell this story outside of this room. We've had a DEFRA minister here this morning. Wouldn't it be lovely if in future we have DCMS ministers, education ministers with us? What tricks are we missing, perhaps the panel know that, to tell the story as an industry?
Do you want to have a go?
Jemma's going to talk about research, but I think the equestrian industry and the brands, and basically the commercial side of the equestrian industry has got a role to play here. So when thinking about sponsorship and the stories you're telling, it doesn't just have to be through your competitive riders in the Olympics, it's through telling the stories of the everyday kind of brilliant social value that's happening through organisations in the equine assisted services sector and riding schools and community groups all around the UK.
I was just going to add that, we all need to collaborate on the research, but the research needs funding, and then we need people in positions of power to share the research with the government so that we can influence spending at a local level. We at SLTH have, along with I'm sure lots of the providers, we have contracts with London Borough of Barnet, London Borough of Camden, but we're not shouting about these. We need to shout about what we're doing more. We need to collaborate more.
Yeah, great.
I was just going to add also about the element about trauma-informed approaches, and quite often the misconceptions around there. Trauma-informed approaches are based in the neuroscience of learning, the biology of stress, and really by communicating that, particularly across the DFE and wider NHS, then I think everybody will really understand why we go upstream to ensure that we're enabling the most positive and strong early starts for our children, and where for whatever reason they haven't had that, we can go back in. And it's underpinned by the science to really support further development and growth.
Brilliant, thank you. Right, we've got time for one more quick question in the middle there. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Becky. I'm a field officer for World Horse Welfare. Just firstly, I really enjoyed all the presentations. I thought they're fantastic, really, really interesting. My question is, I know there's a lot of research in how animals can help humans regulate their emotional systems and all the stuff that you talked about. And I just wondered if there was any research that says that animals have the same response to humans when they're in stress.
Anybody know the answer to that? I think that's a really interesting question.
There's quite a significant amount of research if you look at the still face experiment, which is targeted again about children. So I can't talk about the research more than that, but from my own personal experience, where I have an animal who's in distress, I know that I can loan my calm like I can with a child, and that's infectious. And this is where the science is again, that actually if we put the sort of flagellating cells of a heartbeat in 2 Petri dishes and we put those together, they start to beat in synchronicity. And I think that this is where we're observing in terms of it's the care for the animals that is so incredibly important, and we're role modelling as it is for the young people and all around, because it's so infectious either which way. But if we do find that research, I'd love to know a bit about it.
I think I'd just like to add that there is going to be concern from the general public on the effect of this work on the horses, and it must be researched just as much as the human component. But I would like to add that we've got a stable of 13 horses. 3 or 4 of them we picked up at the point of they were going to be put down. This is an opportunity for you as an equine industry to think about what your horses can contribute to next. It's a really amazing opportunity for them, and we really, really need to collaborate and find all of these ex-competition horses, these race horses, these wonderful new homes, and where they're going to be really fabulously looked after and contribute.
Just very quickly.
Really simple way to kind of negate that impact is giving the horses choice. So most of our work is with the horses loose. So if they feel that impact of the people's stress and they don't want to be around it, they have the choice to leave. And if they don't have the choice to leave, by looking at that framework of the W's, we can try and pick it up and be their voice for them.
Great, well, thank you very much. I think, sadly, I know there's lots of people waving at me because they're desperate to ask a question, but I think we are out of time. So thank you very much indeed to all the panellists and to you for your questions, and I look forward to continuing this discussion in future.